Hey everyone, Alex here, and we're back to this setup, browser in browser that sort of thing, uh, monitor view. So I'm responding to this conversation I had with Kevin Cecchine, I think it is, with Checkpoint News is sort of I wouldn't say it's like really small, but there's like a sizable audience, like 100 or so perhaps. It's the last time. I mean, based on the last time I checked, but it's like a news outlet. They just post up news on their website. So I'm I noticed on his podcast he said that um that the first thing in kind of dismantling the state, which I mean, I wouldn't like not bel like I believe kind of believe in that because otherwise I wouldn't have this channel. So the first step in that is getting rid of like welfare, like the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I guess you could also include unemployment benefits, and as I mentioned, as he mentioned here, when I brought it up, um, I guess like I don't know if they're really specifically benefits, but there are like some like a credit or two, yeah, a few credits like tax credits and tax deductions. Although I think the dependency deduction is out the window, so now it's just credits. But some of them, I guess one or two of them are refundable. Like they actually give you money instead of just like, oh, okay, you don't have to pay this much in taxes anymore. Like you don't that it just well, actually no. If it's non-refundable, then it's okay. Just this year. If it's refundable, it carries over. Yeah, that's how it works. So, just one thing I wanted to say about this. Um, I did interrupt him quite a few times. I felt like I had to be kind of confrontational, I guess, because I did share this with a few kind of left wing groups. I think it was Movement for a People's Party, One Progressive Activists, and maybe Bernie Kratz, all on Facebook, and a couple others that are not as big. So I felt like kind of had to like really put him on the spot there, which he did. He actually took it in stride, and we were still on like polite terms afterwards. Like he know thanked me for coming on and all that. So kudos to him for that. Um, I guess I also interrupted quite a lot because I felt like because the thing about me is that I have kind of a low, I guess maybe a low attention span, but kind of difficulty with like short term memory. And also, yeah, like short term memory, although it is kind of balanced out by perhaps a sort of better long term memory than perhaps would be the average. So, without further ado, I'm going to get to the statistics that kind of I guess kind of debunk his points, really. Um, so here's some statistics on homelessness in Seattle here on Biz Journals. And I think, I'm not sure if well, it is a survey, so it's not perfect, you know, but more or less, I mean, take people's word for it. This is recording, yes. So, homelessness is rooted in the shortcomings of other systems. That's what the kind of point of this or the conclusion of this study is. So, let's see here. So 35% had drug abuse, and 50% had a disabling condition. Now, if you have those being mutually exclusive, that still leaves 15% that just don't have those conditions. So, I mean, they should be able to find something, but it's kind of a lack of homes. Rumors dispelled here. 93% said that they would move into safe and affordable housing if it was available. Um, Now here's something I've heard about it before. I don't quite remember where, but 41% had worked in the past. I think it was the past 30 days or something, or were working at that time. At that time, perhaps. Well, some employed in temporary and some part time, but still, I mean, some of them were full time and long term, but it perhaps just the work that just doesn't really pay well. Perhaps if they're maybe in like in the heart of Seattle, rent could be a lot. Like look at this, more than 70% said that they could afford only 500 a month for rent. Um, so yeah, I mean, like you look at you take that number and take it to, like, say for instance, here I am here I am in Miami, Florida, 500 a month. That's half as much as is the lowest rent. Well, maybe like, okay, 2/3, let's say, of the lowest rent I've seen, unless you go way far out, or like to some kind of little dinky, like, one room thing, like an efficiency, um, which, I mean, I guess some people could do that. I could kind of pull that off, but still. Um, so there's Seattle. Now here's a study. This is just like general statistics. Here's Philadelphia. Now let's see here. Poverty from a lack of jobs at competitive living wages. This is what a lot of the left wing people are talking about. That's why you have this march, or is it March for 15, or fight for $15 an hour minimum wage. You see a lot of people really like campaigning for that, because I mean, you see this and you're like, wow, that's how it is. You're supposed to pay, like, apparently less than 30% of your income on rent. I mean, in my case, like, I actually had a job. I would have just been paying like half my income on rent, and just like, I don't know, just, I mean, granted, I would be just living on my own, but still. Anyways, those are these statistics. It's not just like, oh, people are on drugs or disabled, so they just don't really work well. A lot of people work hard and they're trying, but the wages just don't match up to the costs of living, at least, especially in terms of this housing. Um, I'll get to healthcare later. Like, I mean, you can see there, U.S. spends more on healthcare than any other nation. But so I think, okay, so Kevin mentioned, like, instead of there being a tax base, there being a charity base, and that kind of actually has holds some water. Now, I did some calculations. I think I can, yeah, you can see that there. Um, so let me see here if I can just look into the history. So if we take the wait, okay, here. So so let's say that there's 1.03%, and that's like that's if you have 1 year at 1, and then the next year is 1.03. That's like the inclusion of a 3.3% interest rate. Take that over 50 years, which is pretty much the time span of this. Actually, that's 60 years. So let's redo that. 1.03 to the 60th power equals 5.89. Multiply that by 54, and that's 318. Compare that to 390 billion, and yeah, like it's a gradual, like net of inflation increase, but it doesn't really match up to like what's needed, more or less. I mean, it's still like kind of, we don't really have information on exactly like if taxes decrease, then if charity will increase. I mean, a lot of reports are saying, some companies are hiring more, but then other companies are just doing like stock buybacks and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that, decreasing taxes is inherently like a bad thing. I mean, it could be tax decreases for the middle class, people who earn like kind of middle or median kind of incomes. Maybe increasing the what's it called, the standard deduction a whole lot, and just kind of getting rid of the additional, like the itemizing stuff. Maybe having them as like an additional sort of thing, like an additional deductions as well as a standard. But I mean, considering how the standard one just kind of overtook the personal exemptions and dependency exemption, then well, there's that. Um, then I mean, a lot more people are just not going to itemize, not just gonna take the standard one. So instead of maybe 12,000, it could be, 36,000 or something like that. Um, so that's that. Um, wasn't I? Oh yeah. So I looked up how if like the Federal Reserve would kind of stop issuing money, and I haven't I looked it up and I haven't seen anything that would that really implies that just kind of explains like how it works. Okay, but yeah, I've heard, and he's confirmed that Kevin has confirmed that it is a private entity. The Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, is technically a private entity, although it pays for the budget when there's a shortfall. When we have to have debt, that national debt rising up, deficit that is, in per year that is. So let's see here. I'm just going to get to kind of skip to the conclusion of this rather ad-ridden blog that's the only thing that really kind of implies this sort of danger. Let's see here. Where do I want to start here? So I guess like the threat that's kind of stated here is that the value of the dollar is decreasing, and central banking is pretty ubiquitous, like just everywhere, except for maybe there's North Korea, and I think maybe Venezuela got out of it or is trying to get out of it, and now we're giving them a hard time because dictatorship and socialism, except that it's, I mean, I don't know. I'm hearing conflicting opinions that, okay, well, no, there's more democratic and, it's working for the people pretty well. Maybe even like Europe, like a European country. And then other reports just, of course, a standard, they're oppressing everyone sort of thing. Let's see here. We don't need central planners. We don't have to have a debt-based currency. Now this is like a kind of an interesting idea. Like GFK suggested having United States notes. So instead of it being a private thing, it's just a public thing, and it's just like, okay, just the government's just got it, and we got it. It's fine. Don't worry. That would make sense. Let me see here. What else? So that's that. I mean, it doesn't really say that the Fed is really a threat beyond this whole inflation issue, which, I mean, you got to admit that's the case. But if it spends, my point is that if the Fed like grants this like sort of deficit money as like towards for instance infrastructure or healthcare, then it kind of feeds back into it because people are more productive. People can get places faster or live a few more years of their lives on average. That goes a long way. Although, well, actually, yeah, it could. Year by year, with more and more people just creating more wealth and all that, if it's used properly, if that wealth is used properly. So here's the thing with healthcare. Okay, on 15 minutes here. So I this is basically, I mean, you look at it. It says like 9,000. I think now, as of 2017, it's up to 10,000 now, per person, like per capita health spending. And that's like, I imagine that includes, of course, the taxes that go into, single payer systems. Let's see here. So where does the money come from? Yeah, let's see here. Middle income countries, people still pay out of pocket, but the government has more capacity and is paying for some health care. You see that in, let's say, these, like, let's see, like Bulgaria, for instance, is, um, pretty far off. I mean, pretty, Eastern European, Eastern Europe, that's South America. Oh, this one is, just south of, Saudi Arabia, South America, um, West Asia, South America. You see, like, these are like these middle income countries, and they're doing pretty well. Granted, the life expectancy isn't, spectacular, but it's decent. So let's see here. What's the impact of healthcare when people pay out of pocket? Well, they'll be thrown into poverty. Uh, Excuse me. I'm gonna have to end it. Where's the thing I was looking for? Oh,